Welcome to The Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jenn. This show is about the spiritual journey and all of the challenges, healing, wisdom, and consciousness expansion experienced along the way.
Welcome to another edition of The Brave Journey Within with Jim and Jen. Today we have another exciting episode where we're going to talk about spiritual awakening and maybe different types of awakenings and what that means and how you can live in the moment with all of this stuff going on.
It's so exciting.
It's a big topic.
It is. It is. Well, what do you think awakening is? When you think of awakening, what does that mean to you?
It's a really good question. I suppose I look at it as in realizing that there's something more out there and just being curious and wanting to know what that is. Um, some people call, being a truth seeker, but really wanting to know what's the purpose of life? Like, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this all about? And how can I best live my life?
Well, it's interesting. The idea of being a truth seeker, it's you have to be so willing to not hold on to what you think of as truth because it's going to ever evolve, right? So the idea of being a truth seeker is that you don't hold on to any of it, but you just keep digging for more and more understanding of what all of this is. So I think a lot of people, when they think of truth, they think it's locked into a reality. But we are all, we all have distortions in our understandings. None of us see full truth. So, when you're awakening and that whole idea of what awakening is, to me, it's you just keep trying to understand more and more and more deeply, knowing that you probably will never have in this lifetime the whole version of the truth. And so finding ways to unlock where you feel like you don't have enough understanding or enough truth, right? And you're just trying to get to a point where you're wiser than you were before about the topic because there's always more to understand.
I think when you start to awaken, you realize all of the stuff that you don't know.
Very true. But we have these egos. And the egos, though, they like to find some truth then to stand on and then call it a day. We tend to be like, well, now I know the truth and this is it. And then we sing it from the rooftops and then we realize we have some sort of like an ego crushing experience where then we learn a deeper part of that truth. And then we're like, okay, now this is the truth. So I think a big part of awakening is realizing how much your ego needs to feel secure in your knowing and to get past that and be open to all that you really don't know.
Well, there's a lot of humility involved, I suppose.
Right? It certainly is a great training ground for that.
Uh, and one way to maybe visualize that is the concept of the phoenix, where the phoenix burns from the ashes, arrives your truth and joy. So I think that's probably part of it, right? I believe this about life. And then I realized, okay, it's not that way. So I have to be open to truth is something different. And what is that? And being open and curious about that.
Yeah. And I also think a big part of our ego is that we like to be a part of a group. Even if we feel like we've always gone against the grain, I know a lot of people who feel like they're star seeds or wanderers according to the law of one. We feel like we never really truly belonged, but we do still find comfort in others agreeing with us and others understanding us. And I think awakening in large part is about us breaking free from that and just being open to what we discover and not trying to hold on to any of the programming or any of the need for approval as we're walking that line of more wisdom and understanding and crushing our egoic need for some sort of foundation to hold on to.
Yeah. I had a conversation last night with my father, and he's, very sort of devout Catholic. And we're talking about esoteric knowledge. And he's like, well, why doesn't everyone know this? I'm like, well, you have to ask the question.
Yeah.
No one's gonna do it for you. Meditation and learning about that started to open up my mind, and that's probably where, we should go with this is you have to look inward and ask yourself some really hard questions and do, psycho spiritual work if you want to, but that's where you start to get answers about things, not from people telling you what to believe.
Oh, that's so true. Well, what are some of the areas that you feel would be a good place to start with somebody who maybe is just becoming aware of spirituality, or maybe even they're deeply into it? They're on the awakening journey. Really awakening is breaking free of the matrix. It's realizing what this whole thing is, right? And being able to break free from the programming and the propaganda and everything that we are led to believe about this reality that is, at the very minimum, only a partial truth, but in many ways is complete fabrication. So, where would you recommend people begin? Because it can be really overwhelming.
I might tell them to watch the movie The Matrix with an
Mhm,
open
right?
mind,
But that's sci-fi, Jim.
or is it?
I know, right? I know.
That was a very pivotal thing for me, and, of course, around that time period when that came out, I was, started to study philosophy and meditate in, Eastern religions, and it just clicked. It was like, "Wait, there is this duality or this other realm that exists that we don't see. And if you don't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's very metaphysical in a way. But then what is God? And how does that, you know, work with everything I've ever been taught, as a Catholic growing up and that kind of stuff, what works and what doesn't? What do I believe? you know?
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, let's just go down some lists of things for people to maybe
Sure.
dive into. What would you start with?
Well, I think once you start asking the question or doing work, things will start to reveal themselves to you. So mindfulness is an insight meditation. When you start meditating, you will start to see things or experience things in that time that will open you up. Some people might have a kundalini awakening and realize, they have other abilities and things like that. Sometimes it's unlocked by trauma, unspeakable trauma that happens to people, and then that wakes them up. Um, there's books, literature, awareness by Tony DeMello, like just things that you can learn about life at a deeper level. Um, There's so many things, I don't know where I don't wanna be unfair and list.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's fair to say the first thing to do is to realize you need to go deep. You can't be on the surface level anymore, and you need to question things. Why do you believe what you believe? Who told you that? How do you know it's true? So, if you can even just question things like, even the alien, we were just talking about aliens because it's
Uh,
been so in the news, right? And a lot of people don't believe in it, although a lot of people do now, but especially maybe 30, 40 years ago, it was far less. People believed it. But why? Why would that be so hard to believe? Why would there not be other living beings in this universe or another universe where there might be other planets that have the capability of supporting life. How are we to believe that there's no other type of being out there? And
You have to be
why do we
very,
believe that, right? And so
very
that's just a good
close-minded.
example. Yeah. So, I mean, people can question things from their own internal thoughts about themselves and their own experiences. That's always a great place to start because then you can start working through the egoic issues that will surely come up. um, but then also, why do you have the type of job you have? What made you get into that career? Are you doing it out of it's what everybody does? Is it some sort of a programming, or is it what you really love to do? Is it what you're really gifted at? Um, Same thing with the news, watching the news, and where are you getting your information from? Are you sure it's accurate? How accurate is it? Is it 5% accurate or is it 100% accurate? And are they actually backing things up with real facts, or are they just saying things through conjecture and leading you to an understanding, which is pretty much all mainstream news at this point,
Uh,
and right?
yeah.
I mean, you just can't even trust it now. It's kind of ridiculous. And but even the school system and the things that they're teaching the kids and the ways they're teaching it, it's not about free thinking, it's about compliance. And while there are some really great schools out there, are they really the right school for your kids? Even your college students, the type of car you drive, the type of computer equipment and phones you use, everything, what's behind it and what's the purpose? Just like start questioning it. Medicine, that's another big one. What's the real story behind it? Because there's so much science that's hidden that a lot of people don't see because it's not promoted. And like we could go on and on and on. And so when you think you're making like really informed choices about things, usually you're not. And
I would
so,
say you're often working or playing with a stacked deck against you,
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
and you don't know it unless you do know it, and you start to question things, and then there's the fear of being canceled or ostracized or shunned.
Which brings you
Well,
back to the ego and the need for the approval.
yeah, right? I mean, if anything, in the last few years, it was very scary to see how good people could do horrible things very quickly if everyone
Yeah,
was doing it.
yeah.
So, you know, that's not easy to awaken and open your eyes or say something. And I've definitely caught myself where it's like, I'm not going to say this because these people don't believe this or they're not
Me
even
too.
open to this possibility.
Yeah, me too. And it just makes it so much more difficult. I do think things are starting to shift. I am seeing more opening in people and more of a willing to understand deeper, broader concepts of some of this, breaking free of the mold that they found themselves in. So that's what this whole time period's about. I mean, this is called the awakening. We are awakening into greater truths, and at the same time, none of us have all the answers. So
No,
yeah, we're
but
working it
we're
together,
working
aren't
on
we?
it, right?
We're all fumbling forward, trying to figure it out with each other, and sometimes it's not so fun, but it can be better. It can be, as long as we're doing the inner work along with it. And so you had made a comment, because like you can go down so many rabbit holes. And when I first awakened and started becoming aware of all the things beyond spiritual awakening, but all the things that I believed about this matrix that weren't really helpful, they weren't really truth. And it was depressing. And my husband was like, dude, like, I don't believe half of what you're saying, although he was supportive. But,
I love you, even though you're
yeah,
talking
I
crazy
know, even
nuts.
though you're a crazy nut job, that's okay. You conspiracy theorist, you. But now, most of the conspiracy theories have started becoming true. I mean, everybody sees it now.
It's
Um,
almost like a badge of honor at this point.
yeah, I know it's funny, but it is important to awaken. And I do still have, like, I have clients who still have not started really understanding things, but it's so much better than it was even 2 years ago. So many more people are starting to research these things and question reality as we know it, to come to deeper truth. And but it's hard. So you had made a comment, about conspiracy theories. So why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
Oh gosh. Well, what was I'm trying to think of what was like the big one where I was sort of had my eyes open to things. Uh, well, there's a rap song I was talking about where the guy says, "My conditioning's been conditioned,"
Right? That cracks
and
me
it
up.
always stuck with me. I'm like, "What has it? Like, what does he even mean by that?" Which is an interesting question to meditate on. What would that even mean? Like what? What's been conditioned? We're the good guys. Whoever we're fighting in the next war that we're fighting, because 'cause we're perpetually at war, are the bad guys. Are all of the people that we're fighting just bad?
Yeah.
When we kill people, are they all bad guys? You know?
And
False
yeah, and the
flag.
opposite side of that is then they see us as bad guys. So are we the bad guys?
And
Right?
you
I mean,
To give you some perspective, I was a Peace Corps volunteer, so I got to see things on the inside and how economics work and, development sounds very good. There's a lot of kind-hearted people that work in, aid, but they're also manipulating things,
I'm sure.
and it's not the moral thing that you think it is, and I guess maybe that was one of them. Like, economically, there was a book that came out, Confessions of an Economic Hitman,
Mm,
a few years ago. Um, just start to question things, you know? Um, one of the stories that I was talking about earlier was Plato's allegory of the cave. You're familiar with that, with it showing the shadows on the wall, and they're like afraid, to leave the cave and whatever. But that's kind of where I would say awakening is, like realizing someone's behind the scenes manipulating the shadows, and basically they're afraid, right? So they're paralyzed by fear until they like, open up and like, you know what, we're gonna get outside of this. There's something more than what we're perceiving, and I think that's a big deal.
wow. I mean, I think that's really true. There are so many times I remember facing my fears. Even now, I'm still awakening. I'm still learning things that I thought I knew most of a certain issue or topic, and then more comes out. I'm like, wow, I did not know that. Or I didn't know that was linked to this. And so yeah, it's fascinating. And there's a lot of fear, but they use fear, they meaning the people who have curated this experience, and want to control it for us. And that's a big deep dive that we probably don't even have enough time to really go into. But how are we created, and what is our purpose, and what is all of this, and who's controlling this? Well, the powers that be. And they like people to be in fear because it keeps you out of your power. You cannot be in your power if you're in the space of fear. And you can't be loving when you're in the space of fear. You can't have both. They're two opposite parts of the spectrum. So they keep us out of our power and they keep us from awakening because of the fear. So that's probably a great place to start looking within, is to look at what are you afraid of? And then really face those fears and walk through it.
Yeah, there was a Bashar meditation that someone shared with me today, and one of the things they say is, "My life is my own. No one can live it for me." And then he goes on to say, "Explore yourself with honesty and clarity." So start there.
Yeah.
You there was an exercise you did in the soul development group, which was super fascinating. I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, but we asked ourselves the questions: what are some of the lies you're telling yourself?
Oh, yes.
I remember I remember doing that and being like, "I wish I knew the answer was, of course I don't lie to myself."
Right? I know. No, I never do. Yeah, we do.
Later on, I was with a group of, some really close people, and, I brought up that question, and somebody, without missing a beat, was they said, "Well, I would never lie to myself." And then there was a younger person who goes, "We all do."
Yep.
I was like, "He's correct. We all do. We don't always pay attention."
Yeah, a lot of times it shows up in the form of, like, excuses and things that we give ourselves for why we aren't doing what maybe we know we should be doing, or what we really do want to do, but we find reasons or ways to self-sabotage. I look at self-sabotage as in some ways, as a way of how we lie to ourselves. We're not standing in truth when we do that. But
Well, I the quote I like a lot is, "Excuses are lies."
right? They are. They absolutely are. And they're our own.
Well, when you take a look at yourself, right, there's some people call it shadow work maybe, but, like, it's just there's things about us that aren't all pleasant, and it's okay.
Yeah, none
Doesn't
of
mean
us are
you're bad,
perfect.
doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, it's quite human to be flawed. It's part of our condition, but we have to love ourselves. Don't have to like
And
anyone, but you have to
yeah,
love.
and do the work though. Don't just love yourself for the sloppy mess you are. Like you do need to address when you become aware of something that needs some sort of change or that maybe is less than perfect about yourself. It's good to work at it. If you find yourself lying to yourself within or lying to others or manipulating, we all manipulate too. That was another question I had asked the group is how are you manipulating and
Yeah.
how are you being manipulated? And it's an important question to ask because you start realizing you have your conscious motivations, but then there's also more subconscious or unconscious motivations that you don't even realize are your real foundation. And awakening is so important to address all of that because you need to be the change you want to see around you, right? And if you are being lied to, then maybe you're lying to yourself or to others. If you feel like you're being manipulated, then maybe you're also manipulating others. And sometimes it's sneaky. You don't realize you're doing it. Um, but it's true. We all do it.
Well, you have to have a level of awareness, you know, and that's not for everybody. And maybe that's another point I want to make. Um, the path of awakening is not for everyone.
It's a hard path.
It's a hard path, and not everyone's going to do it. It doesn't mean that you should judge anyone that's asleep or not even open to that. That's not what it's about. You love everyone, but not everyone's willing to do it because it does require a lot of work. And if you don't put the work in, you're not going to be able to fully integrate all the truth that is out there, I guess. Is maybe one way to say that, but I don't know. What do
Well,
you
it's
think?
hard. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I said, what do you think?
Oh, I was just thinking that there's so much in our reality that we think of a certain way. If you think of mainstream thought, especially in the West, the US and mainstream westernized thought, so much of it is just false. And it's not even based in a lot of truth. A lot of it is wrong. Even our history books, a lot of it is not even accurate. And so we base a lot of our experience on what we've been taught and we look at it as truth. When we start really awakening and uncovering how many lies we were told or how many misperceptions we had about what may have really happened or what this might really be about, it becomes very destabilizing. And it's hard. People can get really depressed. They can get really angry. There's like these stages of awakening, especially when you really open up to something that you've had a lot of programming around. Um, there's a lot of resistance to that truth. And then when you finally break through the resistance, it's very, very hard. It's very destabilizing. And then some people just kind of lose it. They, even quit their jobs or whatever, because they can't seem to find a shred of anything to hold on to. So that's not good. That's not we don't recommend that. That's hard. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I don't think it's that way as much anymore because a lot of people who did that, they didn't have anybody around them who understood what they were uncovering. And so they weren't getting the approval or the support or the help that they needed to process the information or to integrate it in a way where they can create a new foundation. And so I think a lot of people have been through that in the past. It might still happen as we move forward and more truths are coming out. Um, but hopefully it's not too difficult. And hopefully there's enough of us going through it that it feels like there's enough support. You're not going crazy in your mind for realizing you thought X, Y, and Z all along, but it's actually one, two, and three, because the vast majority of us are also experiencing that shift. So,
Yeah. Well, it's important to find community. I think once you start getting information and I'm a believer, like, once you start, like, putting your energy out there, like, things start opening up, the universe starts supporting you or putting people in your path to help you along the way, if that's what you want, right? So, choosing that, obviously, your place, Nourishing Journey, has a, sort of beautiful energy about it with people that are, I would say, very open-minded, and explore a lot of different, healing modalities and things that are very, positively oriented to help people, which is was a huge resource for me, especially, like, right when COVID started, it was like, "Oh, I can come here and meet and talk with people and have a community where I'm not just isolated anymore."
yeah,
So it
yeah.
was
What
very
a crazy
important.
time, right?
Well, if that didn't wake you up, I don't know what will.
Oh, more is coming. Yeah,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Basically.
What happens is my guides had shown me that, it feels like everything is so divisive and we're pulling in different directions, right? And as some people are awakening and other people, maybe they're awakening in different ways or haven't awakened, there's this separation that's happened. But what my guide showed me a few years ago, back around the time of COVID, it's like this rubber band that's pulling, 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 and all of a sudden it snaps back and we come back together again. And I think we're almost at the point where it's going to snap back and come back together. Um, but awakening is uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable because you have to choose it and you have to question all the things that you thought you knew, which your ego does not like. And it's never a comfortable experience. But as long as you can try to do it through love of yourself and love of everyone else around you and realize that, okay, maybe you were right about some things. Maybe other people that you disagreed with were right about the other things. Um, and it all kind of comes back together. And you realize none of us knew all of it. And all of us had a lot of learning to do in these last few years. And it's time to come together. And I do think that that's going to happen.
You often talk about expansion. I think that's a big thing with all of this. Soul embodiment, allowing your power to come out. Um, One of the things that Bashar says, if you can't tell, I like Bashar.
Yeah.
Our choices have been limited because our knowledge has been limited. How things really are, and how they expand or they will expand as our knowledge increases, so that we can be more creative. So all of these problems and challenges we have, they don't go away. We're just able to meet them in a more creative way
I
and
love it.
overcome them. I got some questions that people brought up to me about this topic.
Okay.
Some of them were about the the whole concept of past, present, and future all being one. When you awaken in this moment and change yourself, does that all change the past and the future? So I have my answer, but I wanted to toss that out to you first.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that blows my mind a little bit. I
It's
have
That's
had
a hard one to wrap.
experiences. Yeah, I've had experiences where a couple times I've entered into what I think was a parallel reality, where I came in as me, but it was a totally different situation. And it happened during the daytime. It wasn't a dream or anything like that. I literally was hyper focused doing something, and all of a sudden I was in a different reality in a different body. But it was mine, but just different surroundings, different people. And so I know that there's something about all this that understanding has a lot of truth to it. All I can say is, there's a lot of truth in movies and shows. They like to, you know, the powers that be have been heavily involved in the creation of a lot of the movies and shows. So I'll just leave it at that. There's been disclosure in some of those. And by disclosure, I mean truth, different awakenings, different ideas and understandings. It's like a soft disclosure that they're putting things into our frame of understanding, even if we think it's fiction. Um, I've been watching recently. I think it's called DC Legends of Tomorrow or something like that, and they are time jumpers and they go in and they take care of anomalies and battle demons and things like that. It's crazy, but so there's a lot of it that's definitely very fictional, but a lot of it is also it helps me conceptualize better the idea of timelines and going forward, going backwards, and maybe parallel existences and things like that. They navigate all of that in this show, and you can go back in time and heal something and have it affect you now. Um, I think I mentioned in the last podcast that we did that I took a class from Raymond Grace, and he blows my mind. He's very simple, very direct, and he has amazing results. And he just uses his pendulum and his imagination and his intention. That's it. And he has said this on other interviews, so I'll just repeat it. But this came from him. Um, he was, and I hope I get the story accurately enough, but he was working on someone. I think she was maybe in her 30s or 40s, and she had chronic pain. And she had never really slept well most of her life. So when he started talking to her, she let him know that she was very severely abused as a kid. She had burn marks and other things going on, lots of scars, and very deep pain, mentally, emotionally, physically. And he went back in time with his pendulum. He just went back in time to that point where she was talking about this one time that was really traumatic for her. He went back in time and undid it. She slept really well that night for the first time. And then within a matter of weeks, her scars all went away. How amazing is that? The scars were the evidence of the trauma that happened. He was able to go back in time and reverse that trauma so that it was as if that didn't happen. Now, she had the memories of it and everything still. It wasn't like it completely erased it from her reality, but her body didn't hold that score anymore. It didn't hold that as a memory of what happened. So, yeah, what is time really? What is it?
I mean, it's an illusion. It allows us to learn, though. Um, the past and the future are illusions. Everything exists now. So, I mean, and that's past life regression or even inner child regression. You're healing the now by going into the past, right? To heal the present. Um, Yeah, I mean, I have a client who, had a, tumor, breast cancer, and went in for surgery and had felt energy from, the Blessed Mother,
Mm.
and the surgeon was like, "There's no tumor."
Wow.
However, there was X-ray I mean, there was a tumor, but when they went in to do the prep for the surgery, it was gone, and they couldn't figure I mean, like, it there was documentation, "There's a tumor, we gotta get it out," and then it was gone, so it's like, "Okay, I guess you're not having surgery." That
Wow.
that helps awaken you if you're not already
Yeah,
awake.
right.
I think too, sometimes people that are, religious maybe and maybe spiritual, like, something like that happens and it's like, wow, okay, so miracles happen, like healing can happens. It's super fascinating. But you have to be open-minded to that too, I think.
Yeah.
How in Vipassana meditation they talk about and even like yogis, like the ability to manipulate your body, right? Like it's all energy, like cells, illness, and a lot of illness is sort of energetic in a sense of things that have happened in your mind that manifest in your body, which not many people like to hear.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But it is, it's all within our power. That's another part of the awakening, realizing your healing power within,
Well, that's one of the more positive ones, right?
right? Yeah. But yeah, that's about getting into your power and really realizing everything that you have available to you to help create a different reality or to learn through what is showing up and to use it to your benefit. Um, it's a catalyst for your growth. And so when you're really allowing what's showing up and not being in resistance, everything starts flowing in a different direction.
Yeah. Bashar says, no insistence, no resistance. Just allow it to happen.
Oh, that is
Everything
hard.
comes when it's supposed to. It is hard, right? And it gets into sort of non-attachment to outcome. Like you think things have to be this way in order for you to be happy. You're, in a sense, blocking that from being happy and just allowing or being grateful for what you do have, and then trusting that the universe is going to give you what you need ultimately for your highest good.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the other questions that you have?
Oh, reincarnation. Like once you awaken, do you come back in the next life, like knowing that, or part of one of the ones we answered already? Like you repair the past, it impacts the future, or I would say, you're doing the work now, but it impacts the past and the future. Um, does the soul reincarnate once we become awake?
I would say it depends on how awake and if you've accomplished what your soul needed to accomplish here. I don't think any one definition of this would cover everything. And, if you're looking at it through the terms of the movie The Matrix, if we're awakening to the idea that maybe we're stuck in some sort of a crazy loop here, and we're almost imprisoned here in a way, which some people do believe. I don't know if that's true or not. I tend to not think that. I think of it differently, but maybe that's a part of the awakening. I don't know. Um, but being open to whatever this might be. I will say my guides have told me that I should look at this experience a little bit like a video game. Even though it's very real, they think it's kind of like a simulation, or they want me to think about it that way,
Hmm.
because what that does is it makes us not take it so seriously, when things happen and we end up in resistance, and to remember that we do have power. So, because I used to be a computer programmer, they have me sometimes pull out of the game or the simulation and figure out how I would want to rewrite the situation. And there have been times that that actually worked. It doesn't seem to work every time, and I'm not sure why yet, but it does seem to make a difference in a lot of ways. So I think it just really depends on what you as a soul are trying to learn and accomplish. And some lifetimes you awaken to certain things, and then maybe the next lifetime you'll awaken to something different. And you don't always necessarily carry that awareness with you from lifetime to lifetime. I think I've had past lifetimes where I was more awake and aware than I am now, at least so far in this lifetime. So I just think it depends. Um, and, if you look at the law of one, many of us have come back as wanderers to try to help in the ascension process. But we've had to get caught up in the wheel of karma again. And with that, we end up having to reincarnate and work through that karma. If you want to look at karma as a bit of a trap, I don't know. I don't tend to look at it that way, but some people do. So maybe that's what they're here to learn in that lifetime. And but we came back here trying to help people, and we end up creating karma that we need to work through. And if we don't work through it, I don't know, maybe we need to come back again. I don't know.
Yeah, in the law of the one they talk about, I think they phrase it the veil of forgetting.
Mm,
You know, I have met people that have bypassed that, where they just remember their past lives. It's definitely rare, um, but yeah, it's super interesting.
yeah, I've
Uh,
had some visions of past lifetimes aware and awake. Like I understood, oh my gosh, that's what I saw in a past lifetime. And I'll see that. But I don't just have like a knowing about it. And usually I'll have to go deep into regression to get them. But
yeah, I've met a couple people who not meditating, not doing hypnosis, just can recall their past life like it was yesterday and
well, yeah,
describe it
that's
in vivid detail, which
that's neat.
that blew my mind. That blew my mind.
Yeah, I know.
um, but then what else? So the idea of the wanderer, so choosing where you go, I have heard that too, where you can choose. I don't want to get too much into like the grays, but like you know, diving in and going into a place that needs help, knowing that they're struggling. Souls tend to do that, which is
Yeah.
very very nice. Uh, and we are being assisted as well. So if you didn't realize you were being predictably programmed during the Super Bowl, where you had
Right.
however many aliens in commercials saying hello to Martin Scorsese in New
That's
York,
funny.
the UFOs and flying discs just being overhead, being like, "Hello, we're here." I was
Yeah.
laughing with my son about that. I'm like, "Well, call me crazy."
Not for long, Jim.
Not for long, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was fascinating. What I do have a question for you. What is your Are you familiar with NPCs? Does that
What does that
term
mean?
mean to you? Non-player character?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I thought you said MPC. Yeah, NPC. Yeah.
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 What is your understanding of that? Because that has been coming into my field of awareness more recently, where these are essentially non-player characters. So people
I
that exist
yeah.
that are simply existing essentially, but
They
not.
don't necessarily have like a soul in them, or it's almost like they're a void, or they're just a part of the matrix. They're not really. Yeah, they're non-player characters, so they're just as a part of like the background in your experience. My guides have said that that is true. Um,
I've
and
read that in a number of books. It
yeah, and I tend to
just blows
believe
my
it.
mind.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was just listening to something the other day about narcissists, and that the belief is that there's a void in them, and that they don't necessarily have a soul. And I don't know how true that is, or maybe if they do, that, this, I tend to think the souls are maybe more negative, but maybe there is a case where, or, some cases where there's like a void and the soul that was there has checked out, and the evidently like the mind body spirit complex was taken over by negative beings, and it could be a variety of different beings using the body. I don't know how all true that is. I do tend to feel that there's some truth in that. I do think that there's, and I would maybe chalk that up also to non-player characters, because if the original soul is not in the body and it's not being run by a being, a soul who is contracted to be in that body, um, yeah, I tend to think of that as maybe an NPC. I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
I mean, in the movie The Matrix, you have people that are just asleep, kinda going through the motions just on autopilot. That I believe. The fact that someone might be soulless, I don't know, but
Yeah, I
apparently
know.
I mean, you do come across people who, there's they're there, I guess, I'm not sure. Uh, it's one of those things I'm aware of that it is probably a thing, but I don't know a lot about other than people swear by it.
I do think there's something to it. I just don't know how much of it to believe, or what I don't understand. I don't know what I don't know. I think there's something to it.
Right. So I guess that's where I'm at. That maybe that exists. It's not influencing how I live my life. Like it doesn't change the fact that I'm working on myself and my own process of awakening and whatever that's going to look like. And if it's true, but if it's not, it's not going to impact me one way or the other.
What my guides have said is that, we're our place in this matrix. It's as if we need to think about it like we are the center of this universe within this experience we're having. We're the center of it and our own experience. And it doesn't mean that everybody's an NPC. It doesn't mean that other players are not playing the game, but we need to be concerned about ourselves, not to say that we don't help others and we don't love others. That should be the focus. But the work, anything that you're seeing outside of you, anything that's happening in your life, it's really about something within you. And the only way to reprogram this experience into something that maybe you're more happy with, or to get what you need from it, or whatever it is to go within and to look at it and feel it and dive into the understanding and look for more understanding. And to not stay superficial with everything going on around you, and to not think that it's anything to do with anything else but you. Um, so now I know that could probably be taken different ways, where it might seem almost selfish, but that's not where it comes from. It's literally, I know you're here with me, Jim. I know we're doing this together, and I know you're not an NPC, but at the same time, my focus is not about you. My focus is about me, and not in a selfish way, but in a way of expansion and growth and love through this experience of me in this universe of this experience. And when I say universe, I don't mean universe. I mean the universe of this experience, is how they put it. So I guess my question for everybody is, what can you do to dive deeper into your own universe of experience within all of this? And how can you grow from that? And I guess that would be, you know, your awakening. That's really what that's about.
Ask questions.
Yes.
Be curious, learn from people, ask what their experience is with things. There's so many people that have had so many awesome things that have happened to them. Um, I don't know. There's just a lot out there that's, I think, fun to learn about. You know, uh, I did a past life regression on a psychologist the other day, and it blew their mind, blew my mind. And I'm
Really.
like, man, there's some interesting shit out there.
Right? I know, I know. That's so fun. Well, maybe everybody here who's listening should book an appointment with you, Jim, and find out what their history is.
I will say that those are fun for me to do because I have no clue where it's gonna go.
I
So
love
it's
it.
always
Yeah.
interesting where it's like you get to be a detective, like, "All right, what's going on?"
And it's
For
so it's
a positive.
expansive. Yeah.
Yeah. It okay, there's more to life than I realized. That's interesting. What else to say?
I don't know. I can't think of anything else. Do you have anything else, Jim?
I would just be open. Things are happening now that are going to be scary. Don't get locked into fear. Focus your attention on what is good in your life and how you want to live your life. Know that you're powerful enough to create the life that you want to live. So if you're
Mm,
not happy, ask yourself, like, what do I want to change? And then start to work on that. And don't ask other people can be a resource, but live your own life. Don't live the life of, you think someone else wants you to live. It's the number one regret people have.
so true. Well,
That's
thanks.
all
That's
I got.
that's a beautiful way to wrap it up.
All right. Well, thank you, Jen, and until next time, bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody. Bye. We are so grateful that you joined us. Check out the description to learn more about us and also for additional resources to help you on your journey.